So first, I just want to kind of review some of the webinar logistics. So this is a public webinar. So this will be recorded and posted to our website afterwards at ebce.org/NEM. So you can view it afterwards. If you have questions throughout the presentation, you can use the Q&A tool at the bottom of the screen. And I have some colleagues on the line that will help answer those questions in real time. Just to note, there's a lot of people on this webinar, so you may want to wait until the end of the presentation as your question may already be answered. Also, do not include your address or any account-specific information in your questions. It is a public webinar, so others are able to view your question. And if you have questions unique to your situation, you can contact us via calling us or email. And our contact center is open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. Another note is that there was recently a net billing tariff, otherwise known as NEM 3.0 decision. And that's currently in the news, but this webinar is not going to discuss this decision at all. So for more information about this, you can listen to the item 12 presentation from our recent board meeting on December 14th of 2022. And you can find that by going to ebce.org/meetings. And I also wanted to give a brief introduction of who EBCE is, as this may be the first time you're hearing about us. So East Bay Community Energy is our local community choice power supplier, committed to providing Alameda County and the city of Tracy with clean, green electricity at low rates. EBCE reinvests earnings back into the community to create local green energy jobs, local energy programs, and clean power projects. Technically, EBCE is a joint powers authority, which means that we are a government agency created by the cities and counties that we serve. So in this way, EBCE is similar to a school district, only instead of providing public education, we provide a public option for energy administered at the local level. So how does this service work exactly? So all EBCE customers still remain PG&E customers for everything except for the source of the energy. EBCE is the default electricity provider, and we procure renewable energy from natural resources like wind and solar, which is then delivered through PG&E's lines to you, the customer. So the two services, power generation and power delivery, are billed separately on your PG&E bill. PG&E continues to handle billing services and maintain the electrical grid, while EBCE provides customers with renewable energy choices at low rates. And just a note that we do not provide gas service, only electricity. So what are your options with EBCE? We currently have 2 service plans available to all of our customers, Bright Choice and Renewable 100. Bright Choice has rates set 3% below PG&E, and Renewable 100 is 100% California solar and wind energy at 3/4 cent per kilowatt hour above PG&E rates. And EBCE customers can switch between these 2 options whenever they'd like, but it may take 1 to 2 billing cycles to show up on your bill. Customers can also choose to leave EBCE service and choose PG&E for generation and delivery if they would like. Okay, so now we will dive into our NEM policy. So if you have any general EBCE questions, you can type those in the Q&A. So just an overview of our policy. It's important to remember that EBCE NEM customers receive generation service from EBCE, and they still receive delivery service from PG&E. So EBCE NEM customers have two different true-ups. They'll have a true-up with PG&E for their delivery charges, and this is typically aligned with the interconnection or service start date of your system. They will also have a generation true-up with EBCE, which is every April. Also, EBCE and PG&E NEM customers both receive monthly credits at the retail rate and an annual cash out at the wholesale rate anytime they over-generate. So the offer is the same financially, whether you're with PG&E or EBCE for NEM. So now we'll go over the two different true-up methods, monthly and annual. So what is the difference between a monthly and annual true-up? The main difference is the timing of when you are billed for any energy that you use from the grid. So with a monthly true-up, customers will be billed for any usage each month that they use it. Customers still receive credits each month anytime they overgenerate, and then they'll receive a payment for overgeneration annually every April. On an annual true-up, customers do not get billed monthly for any generation charges. Instead, any credits and debits for net generation and energy use will both roll over until the annual true-up in April. So customers on an annual true-up with us may owe EBCE for usage, or they may receive payment for overgeneration in April. And starting this year, the update to our NEM policy is that we are offering customers an annual true-up option for their EBCE generation charges. Currently, all EBCE NEM customers are on a monthly true-up, and then they have an annual cash out for overgeneration. And that's when we would pay you for any surplus generation throughout the year. Another small update to our policy starting in April is that we are going to be removing an additional calculation that was performed at true-up to align monthly and annual true-up outcomes. So all of our customers were on a monthly true-up, and we would compare how they would fare on a monthly true-up versus an annual true-up. And the only difference financially here is that on a monthly true-up, if you overgenerate at the end of an EBCE NEM cycle, so that would be like February, March, April timeframe, those credits then get converted to your wholesale cash out in April. On an annual true-up, if you overgenerate at the end of the EBCE NEM cycle, again, that's like February, March, April, those credits can be used to cover charges from previous months at the retail rate. So you are getting the full retail value of those credits if you had to pay in previous months. Now we are removing that additional calculation because the annual true-up provides the same benefit. Also to note, which is not related to our policy, but the E6 rate closed in December, and this rate was highly favorable to solar customers because it valued the midday hours very highly. And so E6 customers will likely see their cash out values decrease going forward as you were transitioned to a different time of use rate. Okay, and so if you know what you want to do, you can select your true-up selection by March 1st. And this will then take place starting in April for the April 2023 to 2024 cycle. The default option is our monthly true-up option. So if you want to stay on the monthly true-up, you do not have to take any action. If you'd like to select an annual true-up, you can do so online at ebce.org/NEM. And this is a picture of that page where it says, click here to choose your true-up. You can also do this by calling us at 1-833-699-3223 or emailing us at customer-support@ebce.org. And so some people may ask, how often can I change my true-up option? And what if I change my mind? So you can change your true-up option once per year. Your selection will take place or be effective every April. So if you change your option in July, it won't be effective until the next April. However, this web form will be available on our website year-round, so you can access it at any time. But again, it won't be effective until the following April cycle. And then if you change your mind and you have selected an annual true-up, but maybe now you decided you want to go monthly, you can do that as long as it's before March 1. We will look at your latest selection on that date. Okay, here I wanted to go through a sample customer. This is a simplified version, but we can see the difference between a monthly and annual true-up for this customer. So starting in May, the second column shows the net usage. So if it's a positive number, they used energy from the grid. And if it's a negative number, they over-generated. So in May, they used energy. And so a monthly true-up customer would have to make that $30 payment that month. An annual true-up customer would not get billed monthly, but they would then have a negative $30 debit sitting in their account. Then this customer in June, July, August, September, October, and November over-generated. And so they get credits added to their bill. You can see the monthly true-up customer, their credits in June were $750, and they increased all the way to $90 in November. For the annual true-up customer, they started with a debit of negative $30, and so that debit will decrease as credits are added to their account, and then it turns positive in August. And by the time they reach November, they have a $60 balance sitting in their account. Then in December, this customer uses energy from the grid, and so they have to pay for that. The monthly true-up customer has enough credits in their account to cover those charges. So you'll see their balance decreases from $90 to $82.50. And same with the annual true-up customer. Their balance decreases to cover those charges. And then we see the same thing happening in January and February, where their balance decreases. And for the annual true-up customer, their balance is now negative. This indicates that they will have to pay EBCE at the end of the year. Then in March, they use energy from the grid again, and the monthly true-up customer has $0 sitting in their balance. So now they just are billed $22.50 for that month's usage. The annual true-up customer sees that their balance continues to decrease. So now it indicates that they will owe EBCE $52.50 at the end of the year. And then in April, again, this customer is using some energy from the grid. And so the monthly true-up customer will pay and be billed $750 that month. The annual true-up customer has sees their balance decrease again, and now it's the cash out period. So now they are billed $60 for the whole year's usage. So if you add all of the monthly true-up payments throughout the year, you'll see that it's $60 as well, but their payments were spread out. Whereas the annual true-up customer just pays $60 at the end of the year. This example is a net consumer. So they used energy from the grid, so they do not qualify for any payment from EBCE. But they are a very small net consumer. So if you tend to consume a lot more energy from the grid, you may see an annual true-up bill that's like $1,000 at the end of the year. And we'll see an example upcoming. So here are some sample true-up bills for both an annual true-up and a monthly true-up customer. And in these examples, the customers were net consumers of energy throughout the year. So I've highlighted here that this customer used about 8,000 kilowatt hours during the whole year from the grid. And so the annual true-up customer is billed $652 at the end of the year for all of that usage. The monthly true-up customer also used about the same amount, 8,000 kilowatt hours, but they are billed $0 because they paid for that usage throughout the year. They also overgenerated in this last month, so they don't have to pay us for any usage in April. And then this is a sample true-up bill for a net generator. And for a net generator, the true-up bill will actually look the same whether you're on an annual or monthly true-up, because this customer overgenerated throughout the year. And so we will just multiply that overgeneration in kilowatt hours by the wholesale rate, and that turns into your cash out value. And that's the $53.78 that's highlighted. So that's how much we are paying this customer for their overgeneration throughout the year. Okay, and then here's a quick summary of the differences between a monthly and annual true-up and the similarities. So both a monthly and annual true-up customer will get monthly credits for any overgeneration at the retail rate. This is the same rate that you would pay us for energy. Both a monthly and annual true-up customer will receive an annual cash out at the wholesale rate per kilowatt hour for any overgeneration. And that is the net surplus compensation rate. And then an annual true-up customer will receive an annual bill for the consumption of electricity, whereas a monthly true-up customer would receive a monthly bill for the consumption of electricity, if it's not already covered by credits in their NEM balance. Both an annual and monthly true-up customer still receive an annual true-up for their transmission and delivery charges from PG&E. And now just a couple FAQs. So how do I know if an annual true-up will benefit me? So the main difference with an annual and monthly true-up is just personal preference of when you'd like to pay for energy that you use. The other difference is that if you tend to overgenerate during the end of EBCE's NEM cycle, which would be February, March, April, and you had to pay for energy in previous months, you then may benefit from an annual true-up. 2, if I choose renewable 100, will I generate credits at a higher rate? So yes, renewable 100 customers will pay for energy at the higher rate, 0.75 cents per kilowatt hour above PG&E. And they will also generate credits at that higher rate if they overgenerate. 3, I like paying an annual bill. Can I do that with EBCE? So yes, now that we have this annual true-up option, if you prefer to just pay one large bill at the end of the year, you can select an annual true-up. 4, what is the difference between the generation credit and credits for surplus electricity generation? So yeah, it's very confusing, but all EBCE customers, even non-NEM, receive a generation credit from PG&E. And this indicates that they are no longer receiving generation service from PG&E because we are providing generation service. And so they'll see the generation credit on the PG&E page of their bill. And then if you are an overgenerator, you'll get credits for surplus electricity generation from EBCE, and that is on the EBCE page of your bill. And those credits get added to your NEM balance. Okay, so next steps. You can review your energy bills and decide if you want to stay with the monthly true-up option or if you'd like to try an annual true-up. And if you decide that the annual true-up, starting with the April 2023 to April 2024 cycle, is right for you, then keep your bill handy and go to ebce.org/NEM to choose your true-up. You will need some account information like your account name, number, and zip code, and a phone number and email address to process an annual true-up selection. Okay, so now I will open it up to Q&A. And see if we've had some common questions come in.
Hi, this is Kelly with EBCE. I'll just jump in here since my colleague Alex and I have been furiously typing away. We've gotten so many great questions. We've already answered 20 of your questions. We have already answered 36 of your questions, and we still have 20 additional questions remaining. I am going to talk through a couple of the commonly asked questions that we've seen so far, and then we'll sort of see what we can do from there to help wrap things up. So a lot of customers are asking, really, which is the better option? Should I go with this new annual option, or the monthly choice? Ultimately, it is really up to you and your finances. I've heard from a couple of customers that have said that they have really large annual bills from PG&E and they'd like to avoid that. If that's your situation today, then by all means stay with the monthly choice, the monthly option from EBCE, because then you won't have a large annual bill from us. If PG&E gives you a large annual bill for delivery charges, we would too for generation charges. If you don't pay PG&E a large amount annually, let's say your generation and your if your generation and usage are about the same over the course of a year, then it's not going to really make a large difference either way. You're not going to see a very significant annual bill. You may want to go that route if, let's say, you typically generate a lot of energy towards the end of our true-up period in let's say February, March. Otherwise, monthly and annual, there's not a really big difference. If you're always an over generator, then either way, it doesn't matter either. There are few customers that are always over generators. They typically know who they are. So I would say, look at your usage and see how, look to see like what's going on the PG&E side of your bill as well. Let's see. There was another question about when our true up happens. True up for everyone happens in April. So typically we get those true up, you'll get those true up bills in sort of April, May, June. So it would either be a true up bill or be a credit. If your total credit is over $100, we send that out via check. If it's less than $100, then you'll see that as a credit on your bill. All right, I'm going to go through and look to see if there's any other questions. I see a question that says that on this slide, what I take away, actually, Gabrielle, can you go back to your slide that had the chart of the 12 months? Thanks. So I have a question. Someone says, on this slide, I take away that monthly trip customers pay more than annual trip customers. And that isn't the case. In this case, the monthly customer did pay more frequently. But the total, I'm not going to pretend to be able to do this math in my head, but the total is about the same. Gabrielle, maybe you can step in on this chart.
Yeah, so the annual trip customer pays the $60 at the end of the year. The monthly trip customer also pays $60, but it's spread out in a $30 payment, $22.50, and then $7.50 at the end.
Right, so in this case, it's really a matter of if the customer wants to make payments throughout the year or if they'd prefer to just make a payment once at the end of the year. Okay, let's see. I'm looking through some other questions. Alex, are there any common themes that you're seeing that you wanted to walk through with other customers, with the folks on the line?
Most folks are asking just about which would be better.
Yeah. Yeah, the which would be better. I think it really just depends on your usage.
Every customer has a unique energy consumption and generation profile. So individual results really are going to vary there. Mm-hmm. In general, we don't expect for most customers that it'll make that much difference, whether it's monthly or annual. But for folks who tend to generate a lot more during certain times of the year versus others who usually most months of most years generate more than they consume, those might be the types of trade-offs you would have used to evaluate your own situation. If you want to reap your credits on a monthly basis or pay your charges for your excess consumption on a monthly basis, then monthly would be best. And if you prefer to do it in one fell swoop at the end of each year, whether that's receiving a bill for the charges or credits for the generation, then you would want to do an annual basis.
All right, I'm typing out an answer to a question that I think others may also have. Customers asking, so why is this even being offered? Why are we making things more complicated in a way? And so we are offering this to our customers because we have had customers ask for this this option. This is it for those customers that have had a have had rooftop solar since before EBCE started service in 2018. You were maybe used to already getting one single bill a year, an annual bill, because that's what PG&E has typically done. And so we're really trying to respond to those requests for annual billing. it is still a little bit different, right? Because you still have a delivery, you'll have a delivery true up date whenever your interconnection was with PG&E, and then you'll have our true up date, and we've moved everyone to April. All right, here's another question. If you generate less than $100 worth of credits, does this credit roll over into your EBCE account for the next period? And yes, it does. You get those credits on your bill and you can use them for a future bill. All right. Well, we still have 50 questions that are waiting in our queue to respond. I'm just going to go ahead and start trying to answer these live. So here we go. I'm a customer expecting excess generation. In that case, which option would be better? If you are expecting to be a net generator over the course of the year, go ahead and select the annual option. I know a lot of folks are installing oversized systems today with plans to electrify their home in the future. So maybe they're making extra energy today. Go ahead and select the annual option. In a couple of years, when you've electrified your home and you've gotten an electric vehicle, you may find that the monthly option is better because now your usage, maybe you're now using more energy than you're generating. Okay. We answered that question live. What are the primary benefits of EBCE over PG&E for customers with solar? Great question. So EBCE, for one, we're having this webinar and you're getting to ask us all sorts of wonderful questions. That's because we are a local public agency. We are a joint powers authority of Alameda County and the city of Tracy. Our Bright Choice rate is 3% lower than PG&E, and we also offer a 100% renewable option that's priced at just 3/4 of a penny above PG&E's normal rates. Some of that renewable energy is actually sourced from right here in Alameda County at a wind facility outside of Livermore. So those are just some of the benefits. I think you could also stay tuned. You could sign up for our newsletters and learn more about some upcoming programs that we will have. We also have Resilient Home program for customers that may be considering solar. That's a solar plus battery installation program. Okay, next. I see Gabrielle's answering that one. Okay. So what happens if you move during the year and you're on an annual true-up? Is a true-up done on the final bill? Great question. Yes. So if you move during the year, if you close your account for some reason, we will handle a true-up right away. That is also one of the reasons why when you switch from a monthly to an annual true-up, you'll see on that form, there's a place where we're asking for your email address and mobile phone. That's, in the event that we aren't able to get that true-up bill out in time. Sometimes we don't find out from PG&E that you're closing your account right away, so we can get you that bill out. Or credit. Let's say that you're owed money. How, we want to be able to communicate with you to make sure we can get you a check. Okay. We have another question. Did you say that a net producer could take a wholesale payout or a retail credit for their next bill? I don't think we said that. But what a net producer would month to month be generating credits at the retail rate at the end of the year. In either case, this net producer would then receive a either a credit or a check that is at the wholesale rate, and that's part of a sort of statewide standard for net energy metering. Okay, can you explain the wholesale credit again? Does it only apply to customers who choose monthly billing but not for the annual true-up option? No, so the wholesale credit is what you are paid out at the end of the year. So when we say that there's a monthly or an annual true-up, the monthly true-up would mean that you would have to pay a bill at the end of the month if you did not have any credits remaining and you did not generate enough energy that month. The annual true-up would mean that you wouldn't have to pay that bill until the very end of the year. So in both cases, the payment that you would have to make is paid for at a retail rate. The wholesale credit is, in either case, the cash out is done in April for both customer types, and the cash out in April is at the wholesale credit. That's at that net surplus compensation rate times the amount of kilowatt hours that you overgenerated. All right. Are we making any progress? You guys all have a lot of really great questions. Here's an easy one to answer live. Is the wholesale generation credit the same for Bright Choice and Renewable 100? Yes. Net surplus compensation rate is the same for Bright Choice, it's the same for Renewable 100, and it's the same if you are a PG&E customer for generation. We use the same rate that they do. Another question about sort of credits versus a check. So if you are expecting net surplus generation annually, how do we reimburse? We reimburse via a bill credit if it's less than $100, and via a check if it is over $100. I'm seeing a couple of questions that are pretty specific to unique bills, and I'm going to let those folks know here on the Q&A that they should reach out to our CSR team, because it's hard for me to answer specific bill questions. So I'm just going to take a moment to do that, and I'll be right back. If anyone else wants to take some questions live, go right ahead. All right, thanks.
All right.
Alex of EBCE Community Energy. I'm actually in the process of answering a question of how EBCE can offer cheaper rates for the Bright Choice plan and what restrictions there are on the Bright Choice plan. So as I was just typing out to the customer who asked this question, EBCE's standard Bright Choice electric generation rates are priced at a 3% discount compared to PG&E's standard rates. And that discount, the only restrictions to that are that EBCE's board of directors, who are locally elected officials, they have the authority to adjust rates if and when they deem necessary. But until they do that, and they don't typically do that very often, but until they do that, that 3% discount is gonna stay there. Previously, the 3% discount had been 1% and 1.5%, but when looking at our finances over the last year, they determined that we could actually increase that discount. So for now, that 3% discount applies to all Bright Choice customers. As far as the question of how can EBCE compete, that really comes down to the fact that EBCE as a local government agency, instead of a for-profit entity, as a public entity, as a local government agency, we have several sustained competitive advantages to an investor-owned utility. And those would include the following. EBCE does not have shareholders to whom we have to pay a dividend. So ratepayer dollars can be reinvested back into lower rates, into reserves, programs, things like that. But we can keep our rates low because we don't have to turn them into a shareholder profit. Also, EBCE as a local government agency doesn't have the same tax burden that a for-profit entity would have. Similarly, as a government agency, EBCE has access to cheaper capital. For example, the bond market is available to us, the municipal bond market, and EBCE has issued municipal bonds before. So those are just 3 examples of how EBCE can offer lower rates. Of course, we're also a much smaller and more nimble entity. We don't have a lot of overhead. We have a very small team in comparison to PG&E. So for all those reasons, we can offer very competitive rates. Thank you for the question.
We also had a question about how Renewable 100 works. The question is, if I choose Renewable 100, I'm not getting different electricity through the grid. Is it that you purchase an amount of renewable energy based on how many Renewable 100 customers you have? Yes, we procure enough renewable energy for all of our Renewable 100 customers. Obviously, when it's put on the grid, we can't control where it goes, but you can be assured that you're paying for renewable energy and you're increasing the amount of renewables on the grid. And then another question for annual trip customer. During April, it was listed we can use it for the previous month's bill, but that would be accounted for already. Yes, because if you're an annual trip customer, any credits and debits are just rolled over until April. And then we do the final calculation. And then we'll see if you owe us or if we owe you money at the end of the year. Okay, my question is, the wholesale credit conversion is done at the end of the true-up period annually. So users are able to use surplus energy at retail rates from warmer months to offset their energy usage from the grid in winter months based on retail rates. Yes, so anytime you overgenerate, whether you're a monthly or annual true-up customer, you get credits at the retail rate, and those can then be used to offset future charges at that same retail rate. We have aggregated metering, so we get annual true-ups from PG&E. Will we get annual true-ups from EBCE in addition now? I believe aggregated NEM customers are not eligible for a cash out, but you should still see an EBCE page of your bill, which has the NEM balance tracked each month. And then a customer on TOU, time of use, when they push energy into the grid, do they get credited at the retail rate? Or is there some blanket retail rate they get credited? Yeah, so a customer on TOU, if you overgenerate during like peak hours, you'd get credited at those same peak retail rates. So it really just depends when you're using and when you're generating energy. The retail rate is the rate you would be charged for energy at that same time. I'm not sure I understand this next question. if the annual bill from EBCE is in April, won't that be again credited per PG&E annual cycle of December, January? Your EBCE and PG&E charges are separate. So EBCE tracks our charges and our true up is in April. PG&E will track their charges and then their true up is whenever your true up is with them based on your interconnection start date. Okay, so this question is referring to a table, so let me get to that. The table seems a bit incomplete. Don't there need to be two payment columns, what the customer pays on the monthly plan and another for what they pay on the annual plan? So an annual trip customer will never pay throughout the year until April. So that's why they don't have a payment column here. They only owe charges at the end of the year when all of their credits and debits are added together. The monthly trip customer would pay throughout the year whenever they have to use energy from the grid. All right. Yeah, so does EBCE and PG&E have separate true-ups? Yes, so your PG&E true-up is probably based on the date when you started service, started NEM service, whereas your EBCE true-up will always be in April. Do we receive both a NEM credit from PG&E and EBCE in April or May? Why does the delivery charge from PG&E change monthly? So do you receive both a NEM credit from Yeah, you'd receive a NEM credit from EBCE in April if you over-generated. PG&E will also track credits and debits for your delivery charges each month. So you may receive a credit if you over-generated from them. And then why does the delivery charge change from PG&E monthly? PG&E typically charges like a minimum monthly delivery charge. It's about $10 a month, but they're also tracking delivery charges based on your usage throughout the year. So then at the end of the year with them, you'll owe whatever that charge is. But if you have specific questions about that, I would reach out to PG&E.
All right, hi, I'll come back and help out with some more questions. All right, I have a question that I'm gonna do my best to answer live here. So maybe this will help clear up some confusion among us. To which kilowatt hours, whether bought from EBCE or generated surplus, do retail, market, and wholesale rates apply, respectively apply? It's a great question. So retail rates, this is if you generate excess energy, in a month, any of those extra kilowatt hours are saved as at the retail rate, and then you have that sitting in on your bill as credit. If you owe money either at the end of the year or at the end of the month, depending on your billing type, you would you pay EBCE the retail rate as well. The other question I just lost the question. Was market, and I lost the question, folks. Can anyone help me find it? Which one? It was a question I was in the process of answering, but I don't remember what the other question. I think it was, is wholesale and market. In wholesale and market, my apologies. I probably have been using those interchangeably. wholesale market and net surplus compensation are all effectively the same thing. That is the sort of market rate. And if you, I'm going to try and put something, see if I can put something in a chat, because I have given this out to a couple of folks already. I don't see that we have a chat function. If you search for PG&E net surplus compensation, you'll get a table that will pop up in the Google search results. And that is a net surplus compensation table that shows the current rates. The rates for as of late are actually quite high. They historically were somewhere around 3.5 cents. Because of market conditions today, that's 7 cents a kilowatt hour, so double what it has been historically. If that is still 7 cents in April, then you'll be looking at a higher credit or check than you might normally receive, just because it's based on the market conditions.
And I'm seeing some questions about why there are two entities here, why EBCE and PG&E. And one customer in particular was asking whether or not they can have their entire bill be with EBCE rather than PG&E. So this is kind of a quirk of the relationship between community choice energy agencies like East Bay Community Energy and investor-owned utilities like PG&E. So just to clarify, and this was mentioned in the webinar, but it's always worth repeating, EBCE is only responsible for the electric generation charges on your bill. So we are only responsible for procuring the source of your energy. So the electric resources, the natural resources that are used to generate your electricity, that's EBCE's responsibility for our customers. Everything else remains with PG&E. So all EBCE customers, and in fact, all community choice energy customers in PG&E service territory are still PG&E customers for everything except the source of the energy. So that means PG&E is still charging customers, all of EBCE's customers, for the cost of transmission and distribution charges and other fees as well. These all appear on the PG&E bill. PG&E continues to handle all of the billing services. So EBCE's charges are a line item on PG&E's bill. And then there are other line items on that bill, as I'm sure folks have noticed. Charges include like utility users taxes, if those apply, or franchise fees, if those apply. But for EBCE, we are only involved in charging our customers for the source of the energy, which, by the way, is is more renewable and includes higher percentages of non-nuclear carbon-free energy. And for the Bright Choice customers, they are at a discounted rate, that 3% discount. Or for Renewable 100 customers, there's that slight premium of 3/4 penny per kilowatt hour. So again, EBC does not, unfortunately, we aren't in the gas industry, or fortunately, we don't do gas services, and we just do electric generation services. And it may also be worth mentioning that for customers who aren't with East Bay Community Energy, i.e. those that opt out of our service, PG&E will charge for both of the services of generating the energy from their power supply and for transmission and distribution charges. So it's worth reiterating that EBCE charges are replacement charges for what PG&E would have otherwise been charging for their energy supply. And it is state law that community choice energy agencies like EBCE are the default provider of service. So this isn't EBCE's policy, it's actually state law. So for that reason, in EBCE service area, we are the default provider of electric generation services. So folks, if they don't want to be purchasing energy from our energy supply, they don't have to. They can choose to opt out online or by phone and return to PG&E's energy supply. And the biggest difference between those two energy supplies is really probably going to be the presence of nuclear power. PG&E's default energy service includes, at least in the previous years, about 40% of that has been nuclear power, whereas with EBCE, we don't have unit-specific purchases of nuclear power. There's, in the Renewable 100 option, it's 100% California-based wind and solar. In the Bright Choice option, there is a negligible amount of nuclear power. And by negligible, I mean about 1% or less, and that was tied to some of the large hydroelectric resources that are also in that supply portfolio. There's a little bit of nuclear power on the grid in that area, so that also falls within the Bright Choice energy supply. But those are probably, in broad strokes, those are the biggest differences currently between our energy supplies. EBCE also has a board-approved policy to be providing 100% non-nuclear carbon-free energy by 2030. So right now, about half of EBCE's member cities and member jurisdictions have chosen to make Renewable 100 the default energy service. So that means if folks don't make any other choices, then by default, they will be purchasing 100% renewable energy from East Bay Community Energy. For net metering customers, this would only apply to the energy that you consume versus that which you generate. And then there are another half of our cities that are on the Bright Choice option as their default. And of course, those customers are all receiving a 3% discount unless they choose another option. And I've seen this question come up a couple of times now. Why would anyone choose Renewable 100 where it costs a little bit more, particularly if EBCE's other option, it has a discount? And that really just comes down to what folks want to be purchasing. Historically, people haven't had options for their energy supply in this area unless they were able to purchase solar panels. So now folks have the opportunity to choose what they want to purchase. And to some folks, the opportunity to purchase 100% California-based wind and solar is worth a bit of a premium. For most customers, that 0.75 cents per kilowatt hour for your average residential customer, it's going to probably be about $5 more per month, although that will vary from month to month depending on any individual customer's usage. It's not nothing, but some folks think that's a worthwhile benefit to have, to pay a little extra for.
All right, hi, I'm back again. I'm seeing a couple of questions about battery storage, and I am not going to be able to, I don't think we're going to be able to answer those at this time. Similarly, for customers that are considering adding additional panels and are concerned about either maintaining their NEM 2.0 status or wondering about interconnection, I would request for some of those customers, the addition of new panels. That's definitely a PG&E solar question, since they handle your interconnection and will also handle the transition from NEM 2.0 to 3.0 for their delivery charges. As far as our plans for solar plus storage, I know we are working on developing a plan. We do have a solar plus battery program today, and I know there has been a lot of interest to have a battery only program, and we're working on that. It's not quite ready yet. Typically, the battery providers themselves want to be battery plus solar providers, so we're working on that. Similarly, there's a question here about a NEM 1.0 customer. Thanks so much for installing solar so long ago. I know the prices were completely different, as was the compensation strategy. If you are still on NEM 1.0 with PG&E, you are probably soon to transition to NEM 2.0. And the only difference between EBCE and PG&E is that is really the timing of your true up. And if you're used to being on an annual true up with PG&E, you would have, since joining EBCE, you would have been on a monthly plan, and you can go back to annual if you'd like. Another question, if you decided to change to yearly now, but later decided the monthly would make more sense to you, can you switch later? I've seen this question a couple of times. So you can switch anytime up until March 1. So you can kind of go back and forth and choose annual now and then go decide you want to go back to monthly. Once we've hit March 1, we're in preparations for the next sort of NEM year, which begins in April. And so during that NEM year of April to April, that's when we can't make any changes, because you're either on a monthly setup and or you're on an annual setup. So it's sort of it's a one time, you can make that change anytime before March 1. Okay, so how does energy generated during peak hours apply to consumption in off-peak hours? So we're talking about energy that's generated during peak hours, which is interesting because historically peak hours were in the middle of the day, but today peak hours actually refers to the later evening, the 4 to 9 p.m. timeframe, when you're probably not generating as much solar. Maybe, the 4 to 6 p.m. in the summertime, maybe you're generating some energy. But peak prices, peak retail prices, it costs more to buy energy in that 4 to 9 p.m. timeframe. So your consumption, consumption in off-peak hours, right? So off-peak today actually means really anytime outside of that 4 to 9 p.m. So the question is, do peak credits have to be consumed in the future or during peak hours only? And so you generate your credit based on the time of day that you're generating. So if you're generating at noon, which is typical, that's actually an off-peak and during off-peak. And so you are then generating credits at that off-peak rate, and you can use that then to offset the higher prices that you would be paying from 4 to 9 p.m. when you're not generating as much energy. Okay, I think we're down to the last couple of questions. There's one question here that I'm not sure if I know the answer. I don't really understand the question. It's a price difference per kilowatt basis. The price difference per kilowatt basis, I don't know if that's reference to like time of day periods or retail versus wholesale. I would encourage this customer to go ahead and contact our CSR team at 833-699-3223. They'll be able to help you out with that. Since we are past the hour, and I want to make sure that we're able to get everything answered. So please go ahead and give us a call. And I see that the last two questions are being answered. I'm going to help out with, all right. Gabrielle, I'll pass it back to you to close out.
All right. Thank you all for joining and for all of your great questions. So just a reminder that this webinar will be posted to our website at ebce.org/NEM. And we have another webinar next week. And if you have account-specific questions or anything that was not answered today, please give us a call or email us. And you can see our phone number and email here. Thank you all for joining. We will end the webinar now.